communication technologies as it relates to mobile. So my presentation today is how mobile can transform Africa. Most people, as has been noted, think of Africa as a wasteland. They think of it as a backwards place full of poverty, misery, corruption. I love this. I found this slide and I was just like, that is the penultimate sign of what people think about when they think about African leaders in African countries, is people in need, but people above them taking what they need. And of course, when you think of Africa, what would Africa be without safaris? And unfortunately, despite the fact that that is not the case, as everyone in this room knows, what I showed you in those first 5 slides is a stereotype. It is a negative stereotype, but it's a commonly held stereotype. Unfortunately, we are the subjects of colonization. And so we still suffer under the yoke of that impression that these colonizers and these missionaries came to save us, to enlighten us, to show us the way. But that's not the case. Anyone who's familiar with Africa knows that Africa is a rich, rich continent. It is a rich continent. The soil beneath our feet is rich in mineral resource. The oil, the minerals, the natural resources that come out of Africa power the rest of the world. But we're not just rich in mineral resources and natural resources. We're rich in intellect. They say necessity breeds innovation. And out of Africa have come some of the most innovative things that have ever occurred. The creator of FiOS, Thomas Mensah, Dr. Thomas Mensah, is from Ghana. Fiber optics, a Ghanaian, helped to invent that. So today, I wanted to talk about what we're doing in Africa, innovation that's taking place in Africa, innovation that's taking place across mobile channels in Africa that's revolutionizing how we do things. And when I started doing research for this topic, I wanted to focus on 3 specific areas: health, agriculture, and finance. And then Lupin was like, oh, you only have about 3 minutes. So I was like, so let me just focus on health, because I think that's something that affects us universally. Now, when you think about health in Africa, you think about, my parents are from Imo State. They're from the village, or from Owerri. And so when you go home and you go to the village, you're not in the city. When you're in the village, being in the village means that there's no NEPA, there's no running water, you have a borehole, there's no anything, there's no access, there's no roads, there's a lot of places that are still very bush. If you're from the bush is the bush is the bush. And so when you're in the bush and you need access to healthcare, it's often hard to come by. You may know of one doctor in the whole village, and that doctor may be, an hour away, or 2 hours away, or a 3-hour car ride away, even though it may be only 10 miles down the road. But the reality is, that is what we're facing. Oftentimes, when you're in the village, you don't have real knowledge of what's going on. What's affecting you? Is it malaria? Did you get a bug bite? Did you drink bad water? Did you eat some bad food? So diagnosing what's wrong is also very difficult. And then, if you know what's wrong and you get to a doctor and you get to the pharmacist and you get the medicine may not even be what you think it is. If you're supposed to have malaria pills, you may have a placebo. If you're supposed to get antibiotics, you may be getting water. So for me, when I started doing research and I was looking at all the things that people face when it came to healthcare in Africa, I thought to myself, okay, so let's focus on how can mobile technology be leveraged to provide adequate health care to individuals in Africa? So that's really where I wanted to go, and I wanted to go faster. So there were 3 solutions that I found. One was an app called Find a Med in Nigeria. The second was an app called Med Africa in Kenya, and the third was Metubabu in Uganda. And each of these apps focused on solving a different problem that people face. Find a Med in Nigeria focused on resolving the issue of, I don't know what's wrong with me, I don't know how to find a doctor, if I find a doctor, which is the closest one to me. So this app dealt with the very basic, what's wrong with me and where do I go to get help? In Kenya, Med Africa went a step further. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know where to find a doctor. If I find a doctor, how do I know that the doctor is viable or credible and the medicine that he's giving me is real? And so this app helps you do all the things that the Find a Med app did, but it also helped you look at the barcode or look at information, look at the pill itself that you were getting from the pharmacist and determine whether or not it was an authentic medication or not. Revolutionary. And then finally, the guy who developed this app was suffering from something. He didn't know what it was, but he had had malaria as a child. And he was just sick and tired of being pricked with needles in order to do the blood test that was necessary to determine whether or not it was malaria. And so he developed an app that basically used the light from a cell phone to read whether or not you have malaria in the blood, because apparently malaria can be detected through light. And so he was at the university in Uganda, he had a couple friends, and together they came up with something that they ultimately pitched, got money for, to build this application, and now it has revolutionized malaria diagnosis in Uganda and in Africa, because it can now be done without the painful and oftentimes uncomfortable process of pinpricking to draw blood. And so all of these instances are how, because people had a specific need and because they were thinking outside of the box, I know people hate that expression, but it's true, they were able to come up with mobile innovations, and these innovations relied on technology. And so when you talk about information technology and how information and communication technologies can change Africa, mobile technology, I think, is at the forefront of that, because it doesn't require, as someone said earlier, a lot of the infrastructure you need. You know a developer, you have an idea, you can create a prototype, you can test a prototype, you can get beta testers to use it, and if it's successful, people will use it. And in Africa, people will use it, and that's all I have to say. So, thank you for indulging me.